Здравствуйте, мои любители атмосферы декаданса и псевдоинтеллектуального флера, любители хорошего авторского кинематографа, качественной еды и элитного алкоголя. Меня зовут silentium.vulpes, и это мой канал. И перед тем, как посмотреть это видео, я прошу вас помочь мне словом и делом, подписавшись на канал, ударив в колокол и оставив комментарий к этому видео. И если вам такого дела мало, вы можете помочь мне с помощью материальной энергии через Donation Alerts и DonatPay, а также оформив подписку на Boosty, которая в зависимости от тайра даст вам возможность посмотреть записи с просмотрами кинофильмов, а также даст возможность заказать каждый месяц лекцию на определенную тему. И если вам и этого мало, вы хотите больше общаться, то для этого есть телеграм-канал, где общение происходит 24/7. Обязательно подпишитесь и на чат к нему. Итого, трансляции у нас идут на Twitch, YouTube и VK Play, а записи видео лежат на YouTube, ВК и Дзене. Ссылки есть в описании. Приятного вам просмотра.
So the thing that makes talking about PT tricky is, well, it's Kojima himself. If you're not into video games or specifically Metal Gear or Silent Hill...
Ой, сегодня такие забавные фотки у Кодзимы были в его инстаграме. Он там в парике фоткался. Вообще такой озорник. И сегодня анонсировали под, у нас получается, Switch, в том числе издание Metal Gear'ов.
You're probably wondering what this video is going to be about. So, to be quick, Kojima likes playing games with his audience. He's canceled his Metal Gear Solid series many times, tricked people into thinking Metal Gear Solid 2 featured a different playable protagonist than it actually did, and he even wore a mask and pretended to be the head of Moby Dick Studio, who made a game called The Phantom Pain, which ended up...
Ну, мне нравится вот это такое заигрывание Кодзимы с аудиторией, с теорией заговоров и прочим, и во многом это в том числе о чем серия Metal Gear, о тайном обществе, о обществе патриотов, ла-лу-ли-лило и вот это вот все, которые контролируют мир, мировые частные военные организации и денежки, которые остались после Советского Союза.
Being the fifth Metal Gear Solid. Because of this, Kojima fans have a habit of going overboard when analyzing his games and statements in an attempt to understand them or scry some hidden message. And I'm allowed to say that because I'm one of those people. My original video for how to solve PT was, at least in part, an exercise in insanity that turned out to not even be right. Though it did lead to people shouting Jareth at the...
Ой, я помню, как я это орал, Господи Иисусе. Это было прям тяжко.
TVs, so maybe it was worth it.
Jareth!
That's two.
Jareth!
Turn to the left.
Jareth!
Turn. Go the other way.
Jareth! Jareth!
I don't see her, do you?
Jareth! Oh, my controller rumbled!
All right, don't move.
Jareth! 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 Jareth!
This kind of nuttery
Это буквально мой стрим.
isn't entirely our fault. Kojima practically encourages overwrought analysis of his works, but that doesn't excuse the volume of theories regarding Kojima's work that I can only describe as intense, nor does it excuse the absurdity of those theories, both of which give me pause when deciding to make a video like this. I mean, no matter how much research is backing my theory or how much sense it makes on its face, I'm still rubbing elbows with gonzo shit like this.
Так. Блин. Что? МЧС.
Look, I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't think it was at least somewhat based in reality and interesting to think about. I believe I met those requirements. So?
Надеюсь, когда-нибудь мои стримы и моя деятельность будет такой же.
Here we go. I don't think PT was a teaser for Silent Hills.
Так.
Let's get a few things out of the way.
А что же это тогда было? Чей же это тогда был сон?
One, many people worked on all of the games Kojima has made, and I do not intend to put him on a pedestal like he's the only one who matters. All of Kojima productions, both past and present.
Да, кстати, мне безумно нравится логотип с лисичкой. Хотелось бы его присвоить себе, но он уже есть.
Deserve recognition for the time and energy spent on Kojima's various ayahuasca vision quests. 2. I will mention certain Konami staff by name here, but this is not an invitation to harass them. 3. Konami, please don't sue me. Recently, during Giant Bomb's E3 2019 coverage, former Kojima Productions member Ryan Payton explained his thoughts on Kojima's upcoming
И даже Foxhound тоже она прикольная такая с этим самым с ножом в зубах.
game Death Stranding.
Here's like something that shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Like Hideo, when he works on games, it's very autobiographical, and clearly,
That makes sense now.
clearly the Konami separation experience was not a pleasant one. So I think that he's going to. It's clear. I think there's a lot of metaphor in what's going on. I see it a little differently because having worked there.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know if you remember it, but it has Norman Reedus and he's got handcuffs and then they're broken and there's a baby and he's naked.
Yeah.
And it's Hideo. There's like naked snake. This was his baby Metal Gear, and then it's taken away from him. It disappears, and he's got like
Вот оно
the
что.
handcuffs are off, and he's looking off in the future, and there's this kind of creepy horizon, and it's.
То есть, когда я играл в Death Stranding, это на самом деле то, о чем Кодима, наш любимый бурят, разговаривал с своим психотерапевтом. То есть это просто вот какой-то самоанализ, самокопание.
To me, it was completely autobiographical.
This actually makes a lot of sense. Even Kojima has said that the Metal Gear Solid games are largely him working through his relationship with his father, who passed away when Kojima was 13. So it shouldn't be much of a surprise that Kojima's work can be autobiographical at times, or that Death Stranding is possibly just a giant metaphor for his breakup with Konami.
Да, получается, типа 5 частей. Блин, мне кажется, мне надо тоже заняться вот этой вот криптографией.
Another way, if Kojima were a musician, Death Stranding might be seen as a breakup album. I'd posit even the name Death Stranding, which is when sea creatures beach themselves and die for unknown reasons, is directly referencing Konami management's willingness to kill off Kojima Productions for seemingly no good reason. There's a lot more to say about Death Stranding, but what if we examine PT knowing Kojima's penchant for autobiography?
Dad was such a drag. Every day he'd eat the same kind of food, dress the same, sit in front of the same kind of games. Yeah, he was just that kind of guy.
Это же про Konami
But then one
получается.
day he goes and kills us all. He couldn't even be original about the way he did it. I'm not complaining. I was dying of boredom anyway.
Something that a lot of people have already picked up on is that the finale to PT is seemingly directed at Konami. The dad being referenced can be seen as Konami itself, while the person speaking can be viewed as Kojima. This is a favored theory among fans, who have made a habit of replacing the dad in the sequence for Konami. Konami was such a drag, etc. But if we follow
Главное не кушать одну и ту же еду, это уже очень тяжело. Но, кстати, с едой реально такая штука, что она очень быстро приедается, и ты раньше ее так смаковал, так кайфовал от нее, а потом так... В общем, да, проблема в том, что что-то новое постоянно надо подкидывать в печку, иначе ты умрешь от скуки, в первую очередь. Может быть, от депрессии.
this idea through, that Kojima was really saying these things about Konami, remember that PT came out 5 years ago in August of 2014. Kojima's last day at Konami was October 9th, 2015, and he started his new company, an independent Kojima Productions, on December 2015. So ending PT by saying, but then one day he goes and kills us all, Kojima was predicting Konami would
В общем, все, Кодзима все знал. Сейчас я тему поменяю в стриме, чтобы люди не приходили, вдруг тут хотят Коми увидеть, а тут у нас Кодзима. Хотя Коми и Konami тоже очень близкие. Поэтому, может было и оставить. Идем дальше.
banned Kojima Productions a year before it actually happened. Of course, someone in a high position at Konami as Kojima would have known this. After all, who knows Kojima's contract better than Kojima himself? But it seems like he hid this information in PT via metaphor. Was Kojima trying to tell us what was going to happen between him and Konami? And was that the only thing he hid in the game?
Так, что он еще запрятал туда?
About a year ago, game journalist Joel Couture, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, released PT, a video game ghost story, an ebook detailing PT's release and aftermath. In it, Joel interviewed an anonymous source at Konami who had a lot to say about the company's falling out with Kojima. They tell the story of a Kojima Productions in early 2011, deep in the process of building a game engine for the next installment in the Metal Gear series.
Kojima Productions.
Ну, кстати, движок у них реально выдающийся был, особенно в свое время. Жалко, что он больше не будет развиваться. Мне кажется, сейчас бы он выглядел, может быть, и в разы лучше, чем Unreal.
Had been working on the Fox engine and what came to be known as Metal Gear Solid 5 for many years. I think he had dumped like $100 million or some crazy amount building that engine in the game. Konami, understandably, wanted to use that engine for multiple things. More Metal Gear games, and I guess they're using it for Pro Evolution Soccer right now. From what I've heard, it's a really difficult engine to use. I think Kojima initially said that they were going to license this engine out so students could use it, kind of on the same level as Unreal.
Это, кстати, тоже неплохая идея, по сути, сделать свой движок, и это отдельный продукт, который, разумеется, он не так продвигается, как игры, когда ты сделал игру, получил какую-то прибыль, но сделав его немножко свободным, ты, во-первых, можешь сделать так, что другие люди будут что-то вкладывать, что-то делать. Короче, ты большой контроль получаешь. Странно, что Konami не пошла по этому пути.
That didn't get followed up with anything because it was really tough to work on.
Ну, вот это да.
But on June 14th, 2011, Konami released a mobile game called Dragon Collection. The game was a microtransaction-filled free-to-play.
То есть, даже если смотреть, если, они могли постараться, попытаться его сделать проще для освоения, проще для интеграции, и еще тогда, возможно, было бы, например, заколлабиться с Apple, если посмотреть, как и тот же создатели Unity выросли после анонса того, что их движок будет работать с новым шлемом, то здесь вполне себе видимое развитие компании.
Gachapon produced by Hideki Hayakawa, an up-and-comer within the company. According to my own anonymous sources, around this time, Hayakawa approached Kojima about using Metal Gear's Solid Snake in Dragon Collection in some way. Kojima refused, and, according to Joel's source, took it a step further.
Now, another thing that I heard was that Kojima was very condescending toward the mobile guys when they weren't proven successful yet.
Причем по Metal Gear 4 выходила мобильная игра, я помню, там такой типа шутерок, надо было стрелять во всех, у меня было на айфончике.
He was working on the next big thing, and they were working on a mobile game.
А вот я не люблю людей, которые так относятся к мобильным играм, типа, это говно какое-то, они столько денег в мобильные игры приносят, столько бабла, взять хотя бы вот это Huaverse, просто, я не знаю, это золотая компания. И я считаю очень классным то, что вроде бы как проговорили, что Китай поможет русским разработчикам проще проходить авторизацию в их всякие истории и прочее. И это гигантский рынок, и у нас может реально развиться игровая индустрия, в том числе и мобильная. Такие примеры уже были. У нас уже были единороги по типу братьев этих Бухман, или как там, которые сделали Playrix, и то же самое можно сделать и на китайский рынок, сделать какую-то игру. И опять же ссылаюсь на Голковского, то, что мы вообще русские неплохо делаем кино и игры. Такие до уборной, и продолжим. Пока задавайте вопросы, спрашивайте, интересуйтесь. Ну и много примеров, даже если Atomic Heart брать, что неплохо сделано, и много примеров и ранней игровой индустрии успешных. То, что Невал делала, Герои пятые, тоже как бы такая маркер доверили. Я, кстати, не знаю, насколько это успешно. Это, по-моему, под издателем Ubisoft делался.
And while this is all rumored, someone may have said something to Kojima, and he said something condescending back about their game.
Regardless, Dragon Collection would go on to become a huge success for Konami. Fun fact, Hiroyuki Owaku, writer of Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3, also worked on Dragon Collection as a producer. The development costs of the game were small, but more importantly, it made money hand over fist, supposedly generating something like $1 million a day. The money Dragon Collection was making compared to the development costs of the Fox engine and Metal Gear Solid 5 began to sow doubts about Kojima in Konami executives' minds, including that of Konami's chairman of the board and co-founder, Kagemasa Kazuki.
In In this situation, a lot of the higher-ups were thinking, this
Деньги, как водится, победили.
cost game is making millions of dollars a day, and we have Kojima's studio asking for millions and millions more to finish this game. Seeing it from the executive's point of view, this is crazy. They had built up 3 new studios, had suddenly gone from 1 studio in America to 3 or 4 on the West Coast alone, so they were just hemorrhaging money. So I think this whole thing with Kojima was at a boiling point already.
Looking at archived news releases.
Но в любом случае, 5-й Metal Gear, понятно, что это было разочарование, в первую очередь из-за нерабочего, наверное, открытого мира, но мне кажется, по террорам продаж он типа нормально продался.
Konami's site that have now been erased, we can track Hayakawa's meteoric rise within the company. On November 2nd, 2011, 5 months after Dragon Collection was released, Hayakawa was promoted to corporate officer. On October 31st, 2013, Konami announced that Hayakawa would be promoted to senior corporate officer. And on July 3rd, 2014, he was promoted to vice president of Konami Japan, replacing Hideo Kojima. July 3rd, 2014 is also the date the management structure at Konami was split between clearly executive and content officer roles. Hayakawa was put on the executive team, while Kojima was shifted to the content officer team. Hayakawa's promotions and the shifting of Kojima's role within the company clearly show how Kagemasa Kazuki and
Ну, здесь может быть вопрос, что Кодзима не самый лучший управленец. То есть все-таки креатив и управление — это разные задачи.
Konami's board of directors felt about Kojima's production philosophy versus Hayakawa's. And on April 1st, 2015, Hideki Hayakawa, the man who came to represent a mobile-first, bottom-line-focused future,
Это с одной стороны. А с другой стороны, Death Stranding они достаточно оперативно слепили, сделали и запустили, и все вроде бы успешно прошло. Ну, продажи не очень впечатляющие, но, думаю, Sony все равно оказалась довольна.
became the president of Konami. A month later, Hayakawa announced in an interview that Konami would be doubling down on the model that made Dragon Collection so profitable. We will pursue mobile games aggressively. Our main platform will be mobiles. Following the pay-as-you-play model of games like Power Pro and Winning 11 with additional content, our games must move from selling things like items to selling things like features. The same month this was said, Silent Hills was officially canceled, and PT was removed from the PlayStation Store. Later that year, Kojima, the man who advocated for the old way of making video games at Konami, no longer...
Ну, мне кажется, для Konami, ну, может быть, это с точки зрения какой-то чистой прибыли в какие-то ближайшие сроки, это действительно может быть эффективная стратегия, но, с другой стороны, ты обладаешь франшизами, тебе нужно права на эти франшизы обновлять, тебе нужно напоминать эти франшизы, и ты эти же франшизы мог бы использовать и в мобильных играх. И одно могло бы, в принципе, бустить и стимулировать другое. Надо было быть чуть хитрее, конечно, в этом всем, но и, скорее всего, Konami большая корпоративная махина, которой и так сложно управлять, и они просто с этим не справляются, с такими глобальными стратегиями.
Worked for the company, but not before the release of Metal Gear Solid 5, which was criticized for featuring microtransactions and not being fully complete. When the gaming media caught wind that Kojima's name was being removed from Konami marketing materials in March of 2015, their proof that Kojima was really on his way out the door was a list of executive appointments on Konami's site. There, it was found that Kojima was no longer listed among executives at the company, and this was taken to mean that Kojima had been demoted, supposedly a first for the renowned producer. But in doing my own research, I found evidence that this wasn't the beginning of Kojima's long 2-year divorce with Konami. In the years leading up to PT, Kojima's name can be found among executive appointment announcements on Konami's archived site, the earliest of which was on March 17th, 2009, where Kojima is listed as being promoted to executive corporate officer. This position would remain unchanged for 2 years, when on March 30th, 2011, he was promoted to vice president of Konami. Again, 2 years would pass before Kojima would get another promotion, this time to executive vice president on March 18th, 2013. These promotions happening every 2 years in March seems to indicate that Kojima was on a 2-year contract with Konami. But then something strange happened. On October 31st, 2013, Kojima was demoted to senior corporate officer, a huge step down from his previous role as EVP of Konami, and not on schedule.
Интересно, что могло бы, типа, какие-то там KPI не были выполнены, или что действительно смогло бы в рамках контракта сделать так, что его могут понизить?
with his previous title changes. This might mean that his contract was renegotiated from the one made earlier that year. Considering Dragon Collection had proven to be a considerable moneymaker for more than a year by this point, and Hideki Hayakawa was promoted to senior corporate officer the same day Kojima got demoted, we can guess why Konami did this. But the thing that makes this strange is the timing. PT was released on August 12th, 2014, and Kojima was demoted
внутренняя конкуренция.
and his contract potentially renegotiated in October 2013. That means Kojima was demoted 10 months before PT's release.
You got fired, so you drowned your sorrows in booze. She had to get a part-time job working a grocery store cash register. Only reason she could earn a wage at all is the manager liked how she looked in a skirt. You remember, right?
Она это типа вот этот вот руководитель игры
Exactly 10
Dragon Quest.
months back.
Around the time that Kojima first announced PT, Gamescom 2014, what I was told was that Konami had said not to show it at Gamescom. They had told him not to show it, and the main reason for that was that Konami didn't have the whole contract lined up. Kojima...
Короче, Кодзима-то та еще ревнивая, эта самая девочка оказалась.
Tail that wagged the dog did it anyway. There might be a reason he was so adamant about showing it at Gamescom even though it wasn't supposed to be shown there. Maybe there was a special reason. You never know with Kojima, right? There may have been a specific date or another reason offering some meta-level clues.
Хотя бы кто бы говорил, у меня тоже есть такие всякие заебы ревнивые, странные иногда. Надо это прорабатывать, становится проще.
A month following PT's release, Guillermo del Toro did a short video talking about his involvement in the Silent Hills project, noting that there was an initial version of PT that was quite different from the one that was released.
To collaborate with a master storyteller like Kojima was irresistible. We talked for concepts, we talked about tools, we talked about many things in his headquarters in Tokyo, and then he sent me the first version of the playable teaser, which was very different than what you played now. I saw it, loved it, and commented so, and then time passed and we continued exchanging ideas, and then came the version of the playable teaser that you saw now.
Cross-referencing this
Ну, типа, он повлиял на нее, получается, логично, что он делал комментарии, и версия стала другой. Вот это он говорит, типа, какой вы сейчас получили.
Kojima's various interviews and tweets reveals a rough idea of PT's development timeline. On September 27th, 2012, Kojima announced that he'd be making a new Silent Hill project, saying, "In the past, I've mentioned Silent Hill in interviews, and as a result of that, the president of Konami rung me up and said he'd like me to make the next Silent Hill." On April 29th, 2013, Kojima voiced his
Но отсутствие, конечно, версии Metal Gear, господи, Silent Hill, который бы сделал Кодзима, это грусть, потому что я думаю, что получилось бы великолепно. Серия, к сожалению, угасла, хотя первые части Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3, Silent Hill The Room, причем The Room, как мне кажется, недооценена и забыта почему-то, хотя она имела эстетически свои прикольные штуки, прикольные уровни и атмосферу, и в целом, как она устроена, она, ну, это интересно, это страх пребывания как раз в комнате, который Кодзима использовал, вот это вот этот вид первого лица, это же было в Silent Hill. The Room, какие-то вот эти кишки, по которым ты ползешь, тоже достаточно жутковатые. Ну и главного злодея в виде маньяка-убийцы, что в чем-то такого детективно-нуаровскую атмосферу туда добавляло. Я с удовольствием проходил. Пару раз, кстати, проходил. Еще в детстве.
interest in having Norman Reedus play a part in a new game.
Shattered Memories не играл. Shattered Memories — это про дальнобойщика, который девочку подбирает, как я помню.
Then, on June 10th, 2013, Kojima tweeted about having met with Guillermo del Toro, and a month later, on July 20th, he posted a photo of him and Norman Reedus. Based on these tweets, it seems likely that production on a Silent Hills teaser was in full swing by July 2013. The prototype teaser that Guillermo mentioned in his interview, which was later shown at TGS 2000.
Это ремейк первой части для Wii. Значит, есть шанс, что его переделывают под Switch.
14 was probably sent to him mid-2013. How do I know this? In the final version of PT,
Насколько это похоже на это вот младенца, который ползет в Resident Evil Village.
there are two overt references to the 1938 War of the Worlds radio broadcast from 75 years ago. But by 2014, the time PT was released, that infamous broadcast was 76 years old. Why keep this seemingly inaccurate reference in the final version of the game? I propose that this was done to point out the original intended release date of
Это Origins. Понятно. Надо будет туда, может быть... Еще надо посмотреть, может, его пересдадут.
the Silent Hills teaser, October 30th,
Блин, какая жуткая игра-то этот ваш PT.
2013.
Что-то уже солнышко встает. Не так страшно.
Which was meant to coincide with the War of the Worlds radio broadcast as well as Halloween. After all, what better time to release your horror game? But, as we found out earlier, this would be the month that Kojima would get fired or demoted, throwing his plans into disarray. Anonymous sources at Konami have said that Kojima's firing had to do with him spending too much money without making it back. So imagine being a Konami executive, already frustrated with Kojima's antics and reckless spending, getting the news that not only is he not finished...
Ну, я бы не стал бы, кстати, увольнять Кодзиму, пока Metal Gear 5 не доделан. То есть уж после, посмотрев на то, как все это прошло, насколько там доход с расходом сходится, дебет с кредитом, можно было бы уволить. Но менять типа коней на переправе, ну такое себе. Мне кажется, это неграмотное решение.
with the Fox engine or Metal Gear Solid
Его не увольняли? Он, кстати, сам ушел?
5, but now he wants to start what will likely be years of development on a new Silent Hill game that will involve a big-name film director and star an incredibly popular actor who will almost certainly cost a massive amount of money. It's really not hard to see an exec at least pumping the brakes on Silent Hills, or at most, being in...
Просто назвали Deadline. Ну, надо было как-то оценить, потому что я очень жалею, что Metal Gear 5 таким получился. То есть там великолепный движок, оружие, в целом прикольно по всему этому лазать, но как будто бы нет содержания, наполнения и какой-то такой связности. То есть там еще контента бы туда навалить, прям столько же, сколько есть, и была бы игра просто на 10 из 10.
entirely fed up with Kojima's disregard for Konami's bottom line and convincing the board of directors that he needs to go. Why? Because there's this new guy named Hayakawa who's making us an insane amount of money with his Dragon Collection game. And he says that he can keep doing it with other mobile games. Look, we've already spent all this money on Metal Gear Solid 5 and the Fox engine, and we have yet to make our money back on it. So let's give Kojima 2 years to finish MGS5. Our final contract with him will end October 9th, 2015, but we'll make him sign a 2-month-long non-compete, so his contract won't officially end until December. If the press asks where he is during the non-compete, we'll just say he's on vacation. And let's make sure that MGS5 has microtransactions, because all those profitable mobile games have those.
Я даже не помню, что там... там была эта тема с базами. Ну, что-то эти микротранзакции не очень были убедительными. Иронично, что ты при этом тоже играешь за пустышку без наполнения. Да, есть такой это творческий замысел.
Oh, and Silent Hills? I don't want to hear anything more about it. Exactly 10 months back from PT's release date was October 12th.
Ну, anyway, игра могла бы получиться хорошая. Движок и ощущения от всех этих там оружия и прочего, это было великолепно. Я вообще не помню таких игр тогда. То есть в нее именно хотелось играть с точки зрения механик, трогать, но все эти миссии, они немного, задолбывали в какое-то время.
2013. Based on his Twitter, Kojima at that time was in America visiting his LA studio. If I'm right, at some point that day, he got a phone call from Konami HQ in Japan.
Алло? Что там с деньгами? Сказка о двух пяти.
Imagine being Kojima at this point. The company you've given your life to for 27 years just informed you that you have 2 years to wrap up what you're working on and get out. That annoying dude who kept saying mobile's the future, he just got promoted and will replace you.
И где он не прав-то? Что вы на него-то все давите-то? С другой стороны, чувак бабки зарабатывает. From Дурка, здравствуйте. Режиссер «Титаника» Джим Кэмерон заявил, что на батискафе «Титан» все уже мертвы. Ну, может быть, и мертвы. Скорее всего.
As vice president, it's very likely you were forced to sign.
Он, может снять фильм про то, как он спускается к ним. А там Нави.
An NDA, aka a non-disclosure agreement, so you can't talk to anyone about this as to not affect your former employer's bottom line. Plus, you're going to lose all rights to the game series you helmed for 20.
Кстати, первые игры Metal Gear будут в издании, которое делает это самое под Switch. Я не знаю, кстати, будут они на плойку или нет, но я хочу пройти вот двухмерные, попробовать, что это такое.
26 years, and the game engine you've poured all your hopes and dreams into for 5 years will no longer be yours. It's going to be used to make pale imitations of Metal Gear and soccer games. I'd be pissed. Months later, Kojima would meet Nicholas Winding Refn, the director of the movies Drive and The Neon Demon, and the two became fast friends. The first time Kojima met with Nicholas on Twitter is March 11th, 2014, saying the two talked over creation. The tweet ends with an emphatic fist and features Kojima and Nicholas posing as if they were preparing to do battle. When Ground Zeroes released a week after that tweet, on March 18th, 2014, things between Kojima and Konami seemed fine to the outside observer. But with the benefit of hindsight, we can look back on this game and notice some oddities. On the mission Deja Vu, which was a PlayStation exclusive mission and one giant trip down Metal Gear Solid memory lane, certain tasks you're meant to complete have taken on a different meaning. Like when you're supposed to use a blue light attached to your gun to erase logos of real Metal Gear games, and not the various fake Metal Gear games that are strewn about. At a certain point, Kaz will say,
"You might be able to erase the markings, but the memories will never disappear."
A hint at what would happen almost exactly a year later when Kojima's name was erased from Metal Gear Solid 5 marketing materials. And after you erase all the logos to real Metal Gear games, Kaz says,
"You did it. You erased all the markings, but every one of them will always be with you." You seem to be a fan of Hideo Kojima games.
That last part's interesting, considering that Psycho Mantis' original line that's being referenced here was,
"I see that you enjoy Konami games."
Also during this mission, you can find a Kojima Productions logo without the fox in it for both the main and LA studios, hinting that there would be a point in the future where Kojima Productions would lose the Fox engine, the Metal Gear franchise, or both. 3 months later, on June 12, 2014, Kojima was interviewed by Time, who asked him why he came back to the series when he said he'd stopped making Metal Gear Solid games after MGS4. Kojima responded by saying he originally wanted his younger staff to helm MGS5, but numbered MGS games turned out to be too big for them. He ended his answer by saying, "And this time, I'll say it again, this is the last one. Not the last Metal Gear, but the last one I'll work on." But Kojima wasn't going out without a fight. At some point before or around this time, Kojima realized his staff had already done all this work on a teaser for Silent Hills back when it was actually going to happen. The concept trailer was neat, and it was an absolute shame it would never come to pass. But what if he could tweak it to create a small, unrelated game with a hidden message? A gauntlet of absurd puzzles with a trailer for his unfairly canceled Silent Hills project at the end. After all, as long as his staff kept the secret, none of the execs actually played video games, so they wouldn't beat it and shut it down.
Они были правы, я думаю, что правда руководство не играет в игры, а смотрит на цифры и отчеты.
Prematurely. Besides, once people found the trailer, the cat's out of the bag. Kojima could get his Sony contacts to silently put this new game on the PlayStation Store and announce it at Gamescom 2014. But what about the other people outside Konami who were involved with the Silent Hills project? After all, Kojima didn't have any of their contracts finalized. He'd have to meet with them to let them in on what he was planning, and gain a little confidence along the way. July 22nd, 2014, had reunion with one of my soul warriors, Nicholas Winding Refn, who visited our LA studio. Now I'm fully charged. July 24th, 2014, reunion with my another soul warrior, Guillermo del...
Цифры важны. Здесь как бы... Без этих цифр все эти игры, все эти гении, что они будут есть, кто их накормит.
Toro. Had soul fight and hug. I feel I'm charged. July 24th, 2014. Had reunion with one of my soul warriors, Norman Reedus. It's been for half a year. I feel I'm charged. This game Kojima Productions was making was no longer a teaser for Silent Hills. The previous version was, absolutely, but not this new one. This new one was Kojima publicly shaming Hideki Hayakawa, Kagemasa Kazuki, and the rest of Konami's executives for...
Ну, с другой стороны, это, конечно, хорошо, что он их пристыдил и сделал такую игру. Это отличный шаг. Он отличный непокорный подросток, но он... И чё? Еще дальше.
Long list of huge mistakes he felt they were making, up to and including firing him. It was autobiographical, but shrouded in metaphor, with one of the only ways of deciphering it being through its references to specific dates. PT was more than a great little horror game. It was an extremely creative way of getting around an NDA. One of the reasons I like this theory so much is because it doesn't just explain bits or pieces of the game. All of a sudden, everything about PT comes into focus in a way that it never has before. From the cryptic lines to the colored flashlights, all these things that were once mysterious have newfound meaning. Take, for example, Lisa. What was once PT's de facto YouTube thumbnail, Lisa can now be interpreted as the Fox engine itself, killed by Konami, potentially her husband in PT, through their limited vision of gaming's future and the ousting of Kojima. Lisa is shown resurrected and pregnant, meaning Konami still wanted to use the Fox engine to create more games after they fired the people that...
Блин, глубоко как-то слишком уже натягивание.
The Sync Fetus's monologue hints at...
Она же не ходила у меня никогда вот так.
This.
She had to get a part-time job working a grocery store cash register. Only reason she could earn a wage at all is the manager liked how she looked in a skirt.
This seems to say the only reason Konami executives wanted to use the engine was because they liked how it looked, a reference to its graphical quality and rendering capabilities, despite how difficult it was to use. The working a grocery store cash register line may reference microtransaction-heavy games it could be used for, or other games that weren't utilizing the full potential of the engine.
Ну, был же еще Metal Gear Survival, точно. Странная вообще игра. Странные концепции. Такое ощущение, как будто в ней было что-то схожее на Death Stranding. Там такие большие твари непонятные. Может, мне кажется.
The Sync Fetus could also be seen as representing the Silent Hills project itself, a game for the Fox engine that wasn't allowed to come to full term. 204863 represents Kojima, being that the 24th of August 1963 is Kojima's birthday. With this number's inclusion in PT, Kojima seems to be saying that Konami executives, or possibly Kagemasa Kazuki specifically, became enraged by Kojima, largely due to him spending all of Konami's money on the Fox engine, Metal Gear Solid 5, and other ventures while not being profitable, and that they were driven to destroy Kojima Productions because of Kojima. This is all mirrored in PT, where a father is driven to murder his family because of the number he kept hearing over the radio, 204863.
Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father
Циферки недостаточно большие.
repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. They said it was like he was chanting some strange spell.
In fact, the first time you hear 204863 in the game, it's said on the radio by a voice urging the listener to give in to paranoia. As if to say Kagemasa was paranoid about Kojima taking all the credit for his company. The reason I'm singling out Kagemasa Kazuki is because another anonymous source at Konami sent some emails to YouTuber Super Bunny Hop and said,
Kagemasa Kazuki, the CEO of Konami, hates Kojima. Some say that Kagemasa has just gone batshit crazy and doesn't care much about the company anymore.
Forbes has also gone on record and said, the first thing you need to understand about Konami is that it is a family business.
Вот так вот. Это не просто компания, производящая игры. Это семейный бизнес. А мы за семью готовы порвать. Да я за мать готов мать продать.
Kagemasa Kazuki co-founded the company back in 1969, with the "ko" of Konami coming from his surname, in case you didn't know. Kagemasa is the chairman, while his son, Takuya Kazuki, is president. The board of directors has Kazuki's nephew and son-in-law with seats, and fully 4 out of the 7 internal directors of the company are part of the Kazuki clan in some form or another. So the
Ну, непотизм и типа вот семейный бизнес это вот только в России. В других такого нету в нормальных типа странах. Вот типа почему так хорошо в Японии бизнес устроен и все как бы работает? Потому что там нету непотизма, там своих не устраивают. Там как бы вот кто лучше, того и тапки. Да?
of Hideo Kojima was already somewhat of an outsider to that arrangement. He's also been very adept at handling PR and subsequently creating a great man myth about himself. And then there's this.
I walked. I could do nothing but walk. And then I saw me walking in front of myself. But it wasn't really me. Watch out. The gap in the door. It's a separate reality. The only me is me. Are you sure the only you is you?
Was Kojima telling us how he felt when he was let go by Konami? When he was given 2 years to finish MGS5, all he could do was move forward. But then he saw his replacement as VP and member of the board, Hideki Hayakawa. He couldn't just let them get
То есть вы думаете, что Россия другие этносы подсирают, да? Чупа-чупс.
away with this. He had to fight back. He was Hideo Kojima, after all. No one could replace him. And that
Лично вам серят, наверное, очень сильно.
separate reality, that was the one where Silent Hills actually came to be, the game the trailer at the end of PT is for. Another message was only one Konami employees would understand. The Konami you knew is gone. Now, they monitor everything you do. They even have special police that will report you to higher-ups if you do something they don't like. You can stay at Konami and live this way, or you can become one of us. The people who will be leaving...
Теперь вот посмотрите на себя. И посмотрите на себя и подумайте, что татары сделали с вашей жизнью.
with Kojima to form a new Kojima Productions. This is all reflected in the Swedish broadcast.
И Башкира.
Så kanske du redan upptäckte.
Один фаза разрастет.
Radiodramat för 75 år sedan var sanning. De är här på vården. Och de övervakar och ser allt. Lita ej på mig. Lita ej på polisen. De är redan kontrollerade av dem. Så har det varit i 75 år nu. Endast vår mästare kan hålla honom. Du har en rätt. En rätt att bli en av oss. Så välkommen till vår värld. Mycket snart öppnas portarna till en ny dimension. 204863.
These aliens, or others, being referenced here might not make sense until you take into account what Kojima would later say after debuting his independent Kojima Productions in December of 2015. Even if the Earth were stripped of life and reduced to a barren wasteland, our imagination and desire to create would survive. Beyond survival, it would provide hope that flowers may one day bloom again. Through the invention of play, one new evolution awaits. Kojima Productions. We are Homo Ludens. We are
Вот так вот. Мы гомолюдены.
those who play. Those others that have invaded, those
Not
are the
your kind of people, как говорится.
people who don't play. The executives at Konami and people who worship the bottom line. That anonymous Konami employee from earlier in this video mentioned this.
A lot of the executives spend their whole lives learning business and accounting to the point where they don't really play games themselves. A lot of the businessmen who are taking over at Konami, they don't even know the Konami characters.
There's also this.
Ну, кстати, в этом, конечно, Nintendo прикольней, потому что есть ощущение, что они прям горят своими играми. Смотрел сегодня Директ как раз.
Knowing you, I was sure you'd notice this game and play it. I will never, can never, forget that day 20 years ago. Because of the 75 years ago line, we can infer that the events in PT take place in 2013, the 75th anniversary of the War of the Worlds radio broadcast. 20 years before 2013 was 1993. I was in Kobe, and it was 1993 when the precursor to Kojima Productions, Kaihatsu Gobu, was formed. The original PlayStation was released the next year, and I remember it well because the section had just been formed. Even the colored flashlights that appear randomly during PT's final loop can now be seen as Kojima telling us what he was planning to do after he left Konami. The red, yellow, blue, and green lights are the same colors used in the original Sony PlayStation logo. He was going to use his contacts at Sony to partner with them and start his own independent studio. After all, both PT and the Deja Vu mission in Ground Zeroes were PlayStation exclusives. I always wondered why exactly Konami made the decisions they did after PT's release. Why did they lock Hideo Kojima in a room away from his staff for the development of MGS5? Why was
Просто Кодзима приходил на работу, и в Konami запирали в отдельной комнате.
every decision he made micromanaged by Konami execs? Why was PT scrubbed so unceremoniously from PSN? And why have the news articles Konami keeps on their site?
Потому что зачем, наверное, игра, у которого нет продолжения, типа демо-версия игры, которая никогда не выйдет. Пусть нам пишут и спрашивают про нее так часто.
Been scrubbed of everything before 2014. Now, it all makes sense. Kojima was putting hidden messages in his games to bypass his NDA and tell the world what Konami and Kagemasa Kazuki were up to. He had
Кодзима хотел открыть нам правду, раскрыть глаза просто на этот мир.
effectively outplayed everyone at Konami, and PT represented Kojima burning his bridge with his former employer. Konami couldn't risk him doing any further damage to their brand. They had to lock him down and get rid of the evidence. So, happy
Селя, здорово. Здрасте, UMTH. Посмотрите фильмец плюс UMTH12. Что вы хотели посмотреть? Я не могу понять, что вы хотите именно из фильмов. Что вы любите хотя бы? Переиграл и уничтожил
birthday
канал.
PT. It took 5 years, but I think we finally got you mostly figured out. If I've missed anything or you want to add to this theory, please leave a comment. I'd love to hear it. And if all this info was hidden in
А у меня есть PlayStation с PT.
PT, I can only
Я могу проходить и просто погружаться в тайное послание.
imagine what's going to
Kojima.
be in Death Stranding. Kojima's soul warriors from PT's development are going to be in the game after all, and it seems to be way more overt with its metaphors. I mean, the main character, Sam Bridges, works for a company named Bridges. Must be a coincidence that Hideo Kojima also works for a company with his name on it, right? Yeah. Must be.
Что-то Кодзима ходит и носит... Короче, Кодзиме приходилось работать курьером, чтобы сделать игру. А вы теперь смеетесь. Вот такие вот они, гомолюдены.
Нам надо ёбнуть.
Ёбнем.
Ёбаем. Ёбнули.
Хорошо.